This is the Vanguard Conversation Series, and I'm thrilled to welcome back Lisa Savage, who's running for the Senate seat currently held by Susan Collins in Maine. How you doing this morning, Lisa?
Really well, Gavin. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks so much. Really enjoyed watching the debate the other night from the Maine candidates, yourself alongside Sara Gideon, Susan Collins, and another independent candidate, Max Linn. I just wanted to get your perspective. What was it like being up there on the debate stage? I mean, you've been in this race for a little bit now, but it seems like it's really now official now that we've had a real debate in Maine.
Yes, that's right. And today I saw myself in my first political cartoon, so that makes it more official to me too. It was a political cartoon about how Max Linn was kind of clowning around quite a bit, and the three women are kind of just, waiting for him to wind down.
That's okay. Yeah.
Well, his tactic to break through clutter was interesting.
And Rachel, that's an excellent question. But as I mentioned, I've got to be way outside the box tonight. I have to be different because I'm competing against $100 million. And so I'm going to put your question aside, and I have a bombshell to announce tonight. Right now...
I would ask that you stick with the question.
Request denied.
But, on the whole, there were no surprises. I had been on Max Linn's podcast already, so I had a kind of a sense of his style.
Okay.
And of course, Collins and Gideon are predictably at each other. They're basically still running the corporate duopoly campaign. The words ranked choice voting will never pass their lips, even though it's clear, it's a ranked choice voting race. So yeah. I'm not sure how well that negative strategy is going to work out for them, but it worked out really well for me in the debate because so many people said, wow, you actually answered the questions instead of spouting talking points or attacking anyone else that was up there. And actually my debate coaches said afterwards, oh my gosh, Max Linn was mad dogging for you, meaning a strategy when people are on like a two-person debate team where one of them is like bad cop and the other one is like the voice of reason. That was not planned. We did not coordinate that with Max Linn's campaign, but it kind of worked out that way because he was attacking both the Democrat and the Republican on the presence of millions and tens of millions of dollars raised outside Maine for these attack ads. So
yeah, I mean, he was definitely correct when he brought up that issue, the fact that all the dark money is flowing into those campaigns and the Democrat and Republican infrastructure, basically, they rely on that dark money fundraising to remain viable parties, unlike yourself, who of course only takes small dollar donations, which is something I thought you very eloquently pointed out at one point in the debate, saying that even Max is a multimillionaire, correct? You're the only one on the stage to be an actual working person, not a millionaire.
Well, I actually think that getting money out of politics is fairly simple. The candidates can just do what I've done. Don't accept corporate donations. Don't accept money from corporate lobbyists, corporate PACs, the PACs that launder corporate money, so candidates can claim they're not taking it while taking it. My campaign has raised about $120,000 over the course of a year, completely from grassroots, because we don't believe that corporate government is going to solve the problems that we're facing in this country. They profit from the problems that we're facing in this country. And so it's, when people in Maine are struggling to get by and they don't have a voice in the Senate because I'm the only non-millionaire up here.
That's correct. Yep.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I thought it was an interesting debate, and I think you're totally correct that when it came to policy, that was the real differentiating factor for me, is that it felt like Gideon and Susan Collins often would just go back to their campaign lines or canned stump speech type of material, platitudes, where when it came your turn to talk, you would mention Medicare for all or make the case for these policies and ranked choice voting. You mentioned a few times that voters can rank you first because they don't have to worry about spoiling the race. And that's another interesting thing, is that had this been a non-RCV election, a traditional non-RCV election, the other independent in the race, Max Linn, might really present a challenge, given the fact that two independents against two established Democrats often end up splitting the vote and kind of creating unnecessary consolidation of like leftist votes when they could be going to another candidate. But since it's ranked choice voting, people could rank you first, Max second, Sara third, or whatever order they wanted, with no fear of splitting the vote. Is that something you've heard from Mainers that they're excited about?
Yes, very much so. RCV really is a game changer, and it's really why I'm in this race. My team has continued to be surprised about how much education needs to be done around ranked choice voting, even though we've had it for a few years now, and it determined the outcome of a race in the 2nd district for the House seat.
Okay.
But still, the GOP has filed a series of lawsuits and tried to get a referendum item repealing it, but just for the presidential election
Yeah, I
that's
heard about
coming up
that.
in November. But that sows confusion in the minds of voters. So they're like, but is there ranked choice voting in your race? So our campaign continues to have put out a lot of educational materials about it, talking when we're in the field, talking with voters at farmers markets and so on. It often comes up. And we did a webinar. We've done this series of informational webinars on issues. And we have one tonight actually on ending the war on drugs and starting the path to recovery, another big issue for Maine. But we did one on ranked choice voting a few weeks back, and it was very popular, really well received. We've had over 10,000 views of the webinar series as a whole. And we had our campaign manager, Chris Kerr, because he's worked on both the ranked choice voting referendum campaigns here in Maine. So he's very knowledgeable. We had Bree Kidman, who was in the Democratic primary as a candidate in my race, but when they did not prevail, they endorsed us, saying, Lisa's the only candidate that stands for Medicare for all and a Green New Deal. Those are policies I support. So they talked about it from the perspective of a candidate in a ranked choice voting race. And then we had Liz Popolo, who's working in Massachusetts. They have it on their referendum ballot for November. And she talked about not only Massachusetts, but the nation more broadly. Where is RCV in place? You know, what is the status of those campaigns to get it statewide? And those are available on my website. If you go to the lisaformaine.org website and look for the drop-down menu on events, all those recorded webinars are linked on that page. So if people are interested in ranked choice voting, I think they might find that really useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're correct that there's a lot of education left to be done. You know, I was talking to my own grandfather about the concept, and he, I mean, after explaining it to him, he understood it, but like even the name alone was a little bit off-putting to him. I think he was like, I think he thought I was talking about something else. And yeah, it's definitely a confusing concept for some people. Although I think as soon as they do understand the concept, they understand why it's important and the value of it. You know, I mean, the Academy Awards are decided with ranked choice voting. It's a good way to get to the bottom of the, you know, popular vote, essentially, the democratic decision at the heart of the body politic. So, I mean, it's so cool that Maine has actually implemented it. And I just wanted to ask, too, what was that process like in Maine, you know, when it first was introduced? Like, was it the work of, you know, ranked choice voting activists, or did the county clerks, did they just decide that it was the best option? Like, how did that go down?
No, it was very much a grassroots organizing by activists to get a referendum item on. And Mainers voted, a majority of Mainers voted in that first referendum, yes, let's have it statewide. But then the legislature has to enact, you know, when we pass something by referendum, it's not a law. The legislature still has to make a law about it. And they dragged their feet and they would not do it. Both the corporate parties feel that it's a threat to them because it allows more voices and more choices into the race, and certainly allows more progressive voices to, you know, sort of show where the critical mass of voters are. But then another referendum again was passed by the majority of Maine voters. And at that point, the legislature enacted it partially. So it applies to my race. The presidential race law passed in the legislature, but our Democratic governor, Janet Mills, dragged her feet on signing it. She let it become a law without signing it, and that delayed its implementation. So that is why just the presidential race right now is a subject of legal action, and it still remains to be seen. We may not know until the day before the election. They went ahead and printed the ballots because they had to, but we're going to see. That was a people's veto effort launched by the Maine Republican Party to overturn just, you know, the presidential use of ranked choice voting. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. You know, people in Maine have shown repeatedly they'll work hard for it. And I feel really lucky to have our campaign manager for my campaign, somebody who's very well versed in it, really knows how, you know, it all came about and how to explain it to people. But I just retired from 25 years teaching school. So research shows the average person needs 7 exposures to a new idea to grasp it. That's a lot of, that's a lot of exposure. So we're, chipping away at that 7. I don't know if you know the internet comedian Ron Placone.
Yeah.
Yeah, he writes for the Jimmy Dore Show. He did a little video I had seen a stand-up comedy routine that he did as a fundraiser for the National Green Party. And he explained ranked choice voting in terms of, oh yeah, so confusing. Like you've never gone to a restaurant and said, oh, well, I want the lobster roll, but if they're out, I've got a second or third choice in mind. It's very funny. And he also has an interesting take on gerrymandering, but that's on YouTube as like ranked choice voting explained in under 2 minutes. So humor always helps too.
Yeah, for sure.
I think you'll enjoy it.
That's interesting too that they're trying so hard, the Republicans, to block it from the presidential level. Like, are they afraid of it hurting Donald Trump? I mean, I don't really see a very viable, third party challenge to Trump in Maine for the presidential election. I mean, are they worried about people ranking like Kanye West first? Like, what's the issue?
I don't exactly know. I know that both the corporate parties feel that ranked choice voting is a threat to them. And the only race in Maine that has been determined by ranked choice voting was a race in which an unpopular Republican incumbent, Bruce Poliquin, was unseated by a Democrat, Jared Golden, who was serving in the Maine legislature. He wasn't unknown, but he's fairly young but not super well-established politician, but because 2 independents in that race polled well enough, the voters for those 2 individuals mostly chose Golden as their second and third choices. So the seat, although Poliquin was ahead after the first round of voting, he lost the seat in the second and third round. So the Republicans think it's a threat to them specifically, but if you look at the history of ranked choice voting, particularly in Utah, I think the Republican Party in Utah uses it quite a bit. It can really go either way. It is actually nonpartisan, but it does favor independence. The Green Party does have ballot access in Maine, and even though I'm no longer enrolled as a Green, Howie Hawkins and Angela Walker will be on the ballot, and we will be able to vote for them in Maine. But does the Republican Party consider that a threat to Trump? I doubt it. I don't know why they fight it so hard.
Right. That's crazy. And I'm glad they're putting up a fight, though, and not letting it just go without a fight, because it is an important democratic thing. And I think that it's just ridiculous that it's not already implemented all over the country. It's just so annoying that people can win elections with, by getting 26% of the vote when it's an extremely fractured field and there's 4 candidates, so it's like 24% of the vote. It just seems ridiculous that we can't have another round of voting so that so many people's vote aren't basically left unaccounted for, because that's what we ultimately have. Is we have a bunch of elected officials where they're elected by 1/4 of the population essentially, and it's not democratic, and it means that the majority of the people are consistently not being represented, and it's kind of maddening, honestly, to watch just from a bystander perspective. But at least your race in Maine really is proving the utility of ranked choice voting, and it's allowing for more interesting populist ideas on that debate stage, and therefore in the realm of discussion. Back to that debate, it was really interesting, and of course we've seen this dynamic play out many times with progressive candidates versus more establishment candidates. During the debates in the presidential level, we saw candidates like Bernie Sanders, consistently give really good policy rooted answers about helping people and making sure that money is redistributed into the hands of the disenfranchised communities of this country. And then, of course, his opponents, like I said, with your opponents, often would just kind of resort to their standard cliches and, kind of talking and almost kind of tricking their voters. When people say, oh, well, I'm also in favor of universal health care. I'm in favor of I'm in favor of affordable health care for everyone. It's like, well, maybe what's affordable to Sara Gideon is not affordable to your average Mainer, and a lot of people can't afford healthcare. And that's what I just think is so infuriating when, someone like you comes to the debate stage with a clear policy substance answer. This is what I want to do. This is the policy that everyone needs. This is the clear, right thing. And then, your opponents just kind of obfuscate with cliches and stump speech language, and without really even saying anything on a policy level. Have you, had a good response to those answers? Do you think that people saw in that debate performance what they wanted to see and heard the answers that they felt that they needed to hear as voters and as citizens of Maine?
Well, we've had a huge positive response to my performance in the debate, mostly around you were the only one that answered the questions. You were super clear and you told us the issues, that you favor and that we agree with. We had a huge influx of donations. We've had a large influx of new volunteers and just support pouring in from all over Maine, which is important because only Mainers can vote for us.
Yeah.
And so it was very gratifying. Lots and lots of people that I used to work with. I've been a
Oh,
teacher for many years in Maine. So many people reached out that I hadn't heard from in a while and said,
That's
wow,
awesome.
that was great. It definitely helped us a lot. Most of the journalism in response to it focused on, the spectacle of the clash between the two corporate parties. But we always got a mention, and it was usually a very positive mention, like, they used words like impressive. Some people said she was the only adult on the stage. One of the funny comments, I did not see it, but I met someone at the Lewiston Farmers Market a couple days later, and he said, oh, the best online comment while I was watching it was someone said, I kept expecting Max Linn and his prom date, Sara Gideon, to leave and let the two grown-ups continue their conversation.
That's
I didn't
hilarious.
really think that Sara Gideon or Susan Collins' performance in the debate were super different, although Susan Collins mentioned me by name twice and said, I agree with Lisa on this.
Oh,
That
wow.
surprised me. I'm
That's cool.
interpreting it as kind of a dig at Gideon, but I'm in the position in this race where I'll take anybody's number 2 rankings. And it behooves me to not negatively campaign against any of the other 3 because I don't want to alienate their supporters who might very well rank me second.
Yeah, and that's another positive about ranked choice voting that a lot of people have pointed out is that it actually discourages that super divisive, negative campaigning because, like you said, you're trying to get that second place ranking on, the voters of Linn and Gideon and Susan Collins. So of course you're gonna want to, appease. They're not appease. It's not like you're trying to get their voters necessarily, but I mean, you're offering them things that are going to benefit them as well. The policies you're advocating for, humanistic policies, populist policies that ultimately are the, smart humanistic answers, in my opinion. Is there going to be another debate, or was it just like a
Oh,
one-time?
yes. Oh,
Okay.
no, several more debates. The next one is on Monday, September 28th in Presque Isle, which is very, very far up in northern Maine. This would be Susan Collins, kind of home stomping grounds at a TV station there. I think it's the NBC affiliate, which also sponsored this last debate. And there are others also in October. I am unclear on how many of the debates will occur early enough in the season to really affect voting because Maine is a no excuse absentee voting state. So hundreds of thousands of us have already requested an absentee ballot
Yeah.
and when that comes in the mail around the first week of October is when it's supposed to arrive in the mail. We can go ahead and vote then, turn it into our town clerk. I plan on carrying mine by hand because I can support the post office in many ways, but I'm not entrusting my absentee ballot to them this year since they've been so much under attack from the Trump administration. So I'm not sure, debates that are later in October, I'm sure some voters will go in person on November 3rd, but with the pandemic, Maine's been pretty good on keeping our, curve flat on COVID-19 infections, but we had this one unfortunate wedding in northern Maine that has now infected hundreds of people through secondary and tertiary. There have been 5 deaths attributed to it. It spread to a jail way far away in southern Maine. So I think they'll have a hard time finding election workers. Election workers tend to be retirees. They're the most vulnerable. And I think that many, many people will just go ahead and vote absentee because, why wouldn't you? So I'm not sure that the later debates will do much to change the race, but we will participate in every debate we're invited to. We had a petition on our website, it's still up there, saying, let Lisa debate. And we've had a series of petitions on issues like Medicare for All. Right now we're running one, let Lisa ask about Lisa in the polls, because polls often ignore ranked choice voting, but 1,000 people signed the Let Lisa debate petition within, 3 days. And it's clear that voters want to hear from all the candidates in a ranked choice voting election. And I think people that organize debates or polls and purposely exclude people who are, candidates whose names will be on the ballot are doing a disservice to voters.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in a ranked choice voting state, like you mentioned. And you mentioned the post office defunding and all these, disasters we seem to be living through simultaneously right now with the Trump administration. I know Maine is a little bit of a purple state. It can be a little bit unique electorally. Do you have any sense as to where the tide is going this November? I mean, obviously neither of the two main candidates are running particularly inspiring campaigns, in my opinion, but I have to hope that, people kick out Trump given just the insanity that we've been witnessing in the last year or so.
Maine is an odd state electorally. We tend to elect independents.
Mm-hmm.
Angus King, our other senator, is
Yep.
an independent, was just reelected in 2018, and he was our governor for 2 terms as an independent. It used to be true when I started this campaign, the largest party affiliation in Maine registered voters was unaffiliated. In other words, independent, not part of a party. That shifted a little bit because we had a Super Tuesday primary this year, which was unusual for Maine, and a lot of voters switched their registration to Democrat because they wanted to vote for Bernie Sanders in the primary. We heard that a lot during the ballot access period. But in the last presidential election, the 2nd district where I live did go for Trump, and we are one of only 2 states that split our electoral votes. The mass of voters live in southern Maine in 2 counties, and all the other counties added together do not equal those 2 populous counties. But because our electoral votes can split, Maine actually sent 1 electoral vote in Trump's favor, and the other 3 went for Hillary Clinton last time. It seems to me that Biden is more popular in Maine than Hillary Clinton was. It's my sense. But if you drive up around where I live in Solon, Maine, there are Trump signs everywhere. So I wouldn't count him out in Maine.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. And I mean, like I said, it just seems like there's been some recent instances where he's proven to be an even more insidious than average Republican president, especially with the protest movement, his just horrific response to that. Like I said, the defunding of the post office. I really am hoping that we get him out of office in November, although I'm not, like I said, excited about the alternative either. Yeah, thanks so much for joining me this morning, Lisa. I said, amazing debate performance. Can't wait to see the next one. You're truly the people's champion of Maine up there, and looking forward to seeing the results of that election too. So thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me again, Gavin. It's great talking with you.